Living alone in my small suburban home, I'd always felt a comforting sense of security. The neighborhood was quiet, everyone knew each other, and trouble was rare. But my peaceful life began unraveling one chilly autumn night when I caught a strange figure lurking motionless in my neighbor Mike Simmons' backyard. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. It looked like someone was just standing there in the darkness, rigid and still. Maybe a statue? But my neighbor didn't have any statues. I knew his garden well enough. Just as I convinced myself it was nothing, the figure shifted slightly, slow and deliberate, its head turning in my direction. My blood went cold. Feeling a tightening unease, I grabbed my phone and dialed Mike. It went straight to voicemail, and panic started to rise. Something wasn't right. My instincts screamed at me to check it out, even though I desperately wanted to ignore the entire situation. Heart pounding, I grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the cold night air. The grass was damp beneath my feet, the crisp scent of fallen leaves heavy around me. Approaching the fence between our properties, I shone the flashlight over Mike's yard. The figure was gone. A brief surge of relief washed over me, but it didn't last. There was a rustling noise coming from behind Mike's garden shed. I froze, barely breathing, every nerve on high alert. "Hello?" I called weakly. Only silence replied, heavy and oppressive. Suddenly, rapid footsteps charged toward me from the darkness. I stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight in shock. Before I could scream, a frantic voice cut through the night. "Wait! It's me, Brian, Mike's nephew!" Brian stumbled into the beam of my flashlight, eyes wide and breath ragged. He grabbed my arm, his grip desperate and strong. "We need to get help," Brian whispered urgently. "Someone's inside Mike's house, and Mike's gone missing." My mind raced, fear clawing at my thoughts. Something terrible was unfolding right next door, and now I was caught in the middle of it. Brian quickly filled me in. He had just arrived, finding his uncle's door wide open, the inside ransacked and chaotic. Furniture overturned, personal items scattered. It was clear something sinister had happened. Reluctantly, we entered Mike's home, the front door creaking ominously behind us. Inside, the house felt wrong, cold, and violated. Shards of glass glittered across the carpet, illuminated by flickering lights. Pictures hung crooked on walls, and the metallic scent of fear lingered in the air. My stomach twisted painfully. We carefully moved toward the stairs, each step creaking loudly beneath our feet. Halfway up, we heard a soft, painful groan. Brian shot me a terrified glance, and we rushed upward, discovering Mike lying on the floor, bruised and dazed. "He's still here," Mike whispered, eyes wide with fear. He pointed weakly upward, toward the attic door above us. "Up there." As Brian frantically dialed 911, my eyes locked onto the attic door. Its knob slowly began to turn, creaking softly. My pulse thundered in my ears, body paralyzed by fear. Police sirens suddenly filled the silence, their flashing lights illuminating the scene. But just as they approached, the attic door swung open, revealing only darkness. Whoever had been there had vanished, leaving behind nothing but chilling emptiness and unanswered questions. Even after police searched every corner of Mike's house, they found no trace of the intruder. Mike was rushed to the hospital, leaving Brian and me shaken and deeply unsettled. Neither of us slept that night, haunted by shadows and the chilling question of who had been watching us. Driven by curiosity and unease, we returned to Mike's home early the next morning, determined to find answers. In daylight, the chaos seemed even more unsettling. Amid the destruction, Brian noticed something odd, a bookshelf slightly askew. When we pulled it aside, we discovered a hidden passage leading downward, shrouded in darkness. With dread tightening my chest, we cautiously descended into a dimly lit basement room. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of mold and decay. What we found made my blood run cold. Dozens of surveillance screens covering every wall, each displaying scenes from homes throughout the neighborhood, including mine. Stacks of photographs littered a desk nearby. I recognized myself, captured in intimate moments I had presumed private. My heart twisted with a sickening realization. We had all been watched, our secrets meticulously documented. Suddenly, footsteps sounded overhead, slow, heavy, deliberate. Terror surged through me as the staircase entrance darkened with an approaching shadow. "You really shouldn't be down here," a familiar voice calmly stated, sending chills down my spine. Mike Simmons emerged into the faint light, now standing tall and alert, eyes filled with unsettling clarity. "You... It was you all along?" Brian stammered, disbelief and betrayal etched deeply on his face. Mike smiled coldly, stepping closer. "People are fascinating when they think no one is watching. They reveal their darkest secrets. I collect them, all those hidden truths that everyone desperately tries to bury." He paused, flipping open a worn notebook, reading aloud with chilling calmness. Every revelation sent icy waves of dread coursing through me. He knew everything, including secrets I thought were long buried. "Even you," Mike said, his eyes locked onto mine. "Like that cyclist you hit one night and never stopped for. You thought no one saw, but I was watching." Shame burned through me, my body trembling as Brian stared, eyes wide with shock. Mike moved closer, his expression twisted with sinister triumph. "See? We're all the same beneath the surface. Lying, selfish, afraid. I simply showed the truth." Panic overtook me. As Mike stepped forward, Brian lunged for a heavy pipe against the wall, swinging desperately. Mike fell, snarling and grappling wildly. I tackled him, both of us crashing violently to the ground amidst shattered monitors. Brian raised the pipe again, rage and fear shaking his grip. "Stop!" Brian screamed, voice breaking. Mike froze, eyes narrowed challengingly. "Do it," he whispered tauntingly. "Become just like me." Sirens sounded again, footsteps thundering above. Mike seized his chance, bolting upstairs just as police poured in. Officers chased after him, their voices urgent and angry. Brian dropped the pipe, breathless, eyes hollow. "It's over," I said weakly, placing a trembling hand on Brian's shoulder. But we both knew the haunting truth. It wasn't over. Mike had escaped, and the dark secrets he'd unearthed still hung heavily in the air, reminding us painfully of just how fragile our sense of safety really was. Working security on the night shift at a nearly abandoned industrial park sounded easy enough at first. The pay was decent, and nobody bothered me. Yet, after a few weeks, things began to feel off. Shadows moved differently at night. Strange sounds echoed in empty halls. I convinced myself it was just boredom playing tricks on me, until one shift changed everything. Around midnight, as I patrolled the silent corridors, I spotted movement through a partially opened warehouse door. My flashlight beam cut sharply through the gloom, revealing nothing but dust motes drifting lazily. I paused, heart beating a little faster, listening carefully. Nothing. Shrugging, I turned away, until a soft, almost inaudible whisper brushed my ears. "Help me." My stomach clenched, fear suddenly gripping my throat. Slowly I turned back, pushing the warehouse door fully open. The hinges groaned loudly, echoing into the cavernous space. Again, my flashlight searched the darkness, catching a flicker of something pale behind stacks of abandoned crates. "Is someone there?" I called out, voice trembling slightly. Silence. Only a cold draft whispered past me. As I stepped forward to investigate, my radio crackled loudly, making me jump. "Check the security feed," my supervisor instructed tersely. "Someone triggered a motion detector in your area." My heart sank. I wasn't alone. With a pounding chest, I hurried back to the security room, eyes glued anxiously to the monitors. My blood froze when I noticed the camera pointed at the exact spot I'd stood moments ago, revealing a pale figure standing just inches behind me, hidden in shadows, watching silently as I'd peered around the crates. It had been there all along, unseen but horrifyingly close. Panic surged as I quickly rewound the security footage, desperate to understand who, or what, I was dealing with. The figure had appeared from nowhere, its pale face expressionless, eyes unnaturally wide and vacant, yet clearly human. Gathering what little courage remained, I called my supervisor, only static answering my pleas. The phone line had gone dead, leaving me completely isolated. My mind raced. Should I run or confront this intruder? Before I could decide, the door to the security room began rattling violently, as if something was trying desperately to get inside. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking with fear. A muffled, distorted voice replied calmly, "Help me, please." Hard hammering, I grabbed the security baton, gripping it tightly as I approached the door. My hand shook as I turned the knob and threw the door open, finding the hallway completely empty, illuminated only by flickering fluorescent lights. I stepped cautiously forward, sweat trickling down my spine. A soft sound came from the break room at the end of the corridor. It was the rhythmic tapping of fingers against glass, slow and persistent. Each tap echoed menacingly, drawing me closer despite every instinct screaming at me to run. At the break room door, I paused. Through the fogged glass, I saw a shape sitting calmly at the table. My breath caught sharply. It was the same pale figure from the footage, staring blankly ahead, tapping steadily on the table. "What do you want?" I whispered shakily. Slowly, it turned its head toward me, eyes meeting mine with chilling emptiness. "You," it replied softly, lips barely moving, eyes widening slightly as it stood abruptly, knocking over the chair behind it. Fear paralyzed me as it took a single step forward, its movements unnatural and jerky. At that moment, every light in the building went out, plunging me into pitch darkness. A cold hand suddenly grasped my arm tightly, sending shockwaves of panic through my body. "Don't scream," the voice whispered in my ear, the icy breath making my skin crawl. "They'll hear you." I couldn't move, frozen in sheer terror as the icy fingers tightened around my arm. My breath came in short, shallow gasps as I forced myself to whisper, barely audible. Who will hear me?" The figure leaned closer, its voice trembling, urgent and afraid. "Them, the others. They're here, watching. Always watching. We have to hide." Before I could question who these others were, the lights flickered back on momentarily, revealing the face of the figure clearly for the first time. It was a young woman, deathly pale and gaunt, eyes sunken and haunted. Bruises darkened her wrists and neck, deep purple against starkly pale skin. She looked terrified, but unmistakably alive. Suddenly, the lights went out again, leaving us blind. She tugged my arm, guiding me through darkness toward a supply closet. My pulse thundered in my ears, each step feeling like a mile. We slipped inside the closet quietly, the heavy door clicking shut behind us. Enclosed in darkness, our breathing echoed softly, amplified by the cramped space. I could barely form words as panic still coursed through me. "Who are you?" I finally managed. "Emily," she whispered, voice fragile, filled with raw fear. "I was taken, brought here. I escaped, but they won't let me leave." I felt sick, dizzy with dread. "Who are they?" Emily shuddered violently, gripping my sleeve tighter. "I don't know. Faces hidden behind masks. They watch and wait. I thought you were one of them at first." My mind raced chaotically. Suddenly, footsteps echoed softly down the corridor, steady and deliberate. Emily stiffened beside me, her grip painfully tight. "They're coming," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Stay quiet." The footsteps paused outside the closet door, breathing softly audible. A shadow appeared beneath the gap at the bottom, lingering ominously. I held my breath, heart pounding painfully against my ribs. After an eternity, the footsteps moved on, fading into silence once more. Emily exhaled shakily, her trembling intensifying. "We can't stay here. They always come back." Gathering my nerves, I opened the closet door slowly. The corridor was empty again, eerily quiet under dim emergency lighting. Emily urged me forward, whispering hurried directions toward a maintenance exit at the building's rear. We moved quickly, senses heightened, every noise sending adrenaline jolting through my veins. We reached the exit, a heavy, metal door that should have led outside. But when I pushed against it, the door wouldn't budge. It was chained shut from the outside, trapping us inside. They knew we'd come here. Emily whispered despairingly, eyes wide with terror. Frantic, I searched for another way out. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life overhead, a distorted voice echoing menacingly through the empty halls. You shouldn't have helped her. It hissed coldly. Now you'll both stay forever. Emily let out a choked sob, collapsing to her knees. They're going to keep us here, like the others. Others? My voice cracked sharply. She pointed weakly down a hallway I'd never noticed before, partially hidden behind rusted machinery. With no other choice, we slowly moved toward it. My flashlight illuminated a set of metal doors at the end, slightly ajar. Inside, I glimpsed something horrifying, rows of beds, restraints dangling ominously from each one, empty except for dark, dried stains. Photos lined the wall, countless faces frozen in silent, pleading expressions, each labeled neatly with a name and a date. Emily pointed shakily at her own face among them. They collect us. They don't let go. She whispered hoarsely, eyes empty with hopelessness. The sound of footsteps echoed again, closer now. Shadows shifted across the floor, accompanied by hushed whispers and cold laughter. Despair clutched at me. We were trapped, running out of options. Over here, Emily suddenly whispered urgently, tugging me toward a narrow vent near the floor. Desperately, we squeezed inside, crawling through darkness toward an uncertain escape. But as we moved deeper, claustrophobic and breathless, the laughter followed, echoing eerily through the metallic ducts. You're not leaving, the voice whispered softly, almost teasingly. You're exactly where you belong. Panic surged through me, dread flooding every fiber of my being. Was escape even possible, or had I unknowingly stepped right into their trap? I never expected apartment 2B to come with a side of dread. When I moved into my new place, it felt like a fresh start. Quiet building, cheap rent, friendly landlord. The only odd thing? The unit below mine, 1B, was supposedly unoccupied. The landlord said it had been empty for months. Renovation issues, or something like that. But the noises told a different story. Every night around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps pacing back and forth. Not casual wandering, rhythmic, consistent, like someone deliberately walking the same pattern over and over. Sometimes it sounded like furniture being dragged. Once I even heard what I swear was whispering. I tried to rationalize it. Old pipes, thin walls, maybe sound traveling from another unit. But then I started noticing other things. My keys, always left in the same bowl, moved inches from where I left them. Lights flickering without any power issues. And worst of all, scratching. Coming from the floorboards, directly beneath my bed. I finally asked my landlord again, pressing him about 1B. Still empty. He shrugged. No one's been in there for ages. I didn't believe him. One night, determined to put my nerves to rest, I went downstairs, knelt beside the door of 1B, and just listened. There was breathing. Soft. Raspy. Right on the other side of the door. I bolted back upstairs, heart racing. I couldn't sleep that night, lying awake with my eyes locked on the ceiling, ears straining for any sound. Sure enough, just after 2 a.m., footsteps again. Back and forth. Back and forth. A rhythmic thud of heel to floorboards. I decided I'd had enough. The next morning, I took the day off work and waited until the building was quiet. Then I went downstairs with a small toolkit. The lock on 1B looked old, barely functional. I picked at it carefully, heart pounding in my ears the entire time. It finally clicked open. The door creaked inward slowly. Dust motes floated in the air, and a musty, stale odor hit me immediately. The room was dark, curtains drawn. At first glance, it really did look abandoned, peeling wallpaper, old furniture draped in sheets. I began to relax a little, thinking maybe I'd imagined everything after all. Until I saw the mattress on the floor, no frame, no blanket, just a single, stained pillow and a flashlight beside it. And in the corner of the room, a stack of neatly labeled notebooks. I picked one up and flipped through. Page after page of notes. About me. My name. My daily routines. What I ate. What I watched. Even conversations I'd had on the phone. There were drawings too, rough sketches of me sleeping, of me brushing my teeth, of me at my desk. None of which I ever noticed being drawn. One note read, "He suspects. Be careful. Don't let him hear you breathe." Suddenly, behind me, the door creaked shut. I spun around, hard hammering in my chest, just in time to see the door latch itself shut, softly, like someone was pulling it from the outside. I sprinted toward it and yanked the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Locked. From the outside. My phone had no signal. Of course it didn't. The silence inside the apartment was thick, smothering. I backed away from the door, eyes sweeping across the shadowed corners of the room. That's when I noticed something else. There was a small crawlspace door near the far wall. The kind of access panel maintenance crews used to reach pipes or wiring. It was open. And just barely visible inside was a pair of eyes. They blinked. My breath caught. For a second I couldn't move. Then the eyes vanished into the dark with a soft shuffle. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, but the panic creeping through my veins told me otherwise. I backed slowly away from the crawlspace, grabbed one of the notebooks off the floor like a shield, and edged toward the covered furniture. There had to be something I could use to break the door open, a lamp, a chair, anything. That's when I noticed the faint red light blinking behind one of the bedsheets. I pulled the sheet down and froze. A camera. Pointed at the mattress on the floor. It was live. Recording. I traced the wire, straight into a hole in the wall that fed somewhere deeper into the building. This wasn't just someone squatting. Someone had turned this room into a surveillance den, and I'd been the subject. A soft scraping sound came from behind me. I turned slowly. The crawlspace door was wide open now. I didn't wait. I grabbed the heaviest object I could find, a thick metal lamp, and charged the door. 1, 2, 3 hits. On the fourth, the old wood splintered just enough for me to force it open and stumble out into the hallway. I didn't look back. I ran to my apartment, slammed the door shut, locked every deadbolt, and pushed a chair under the knob. Then I called the police. To their credit, they came quickly. I told them everything. They checked apartment 1B and found what I'd seen, but no one. Not in the crawlspace, not in the vents, nowhere. The officers looked at me like I'd imagined half of it. Probably someone squatting, one of them said. Moved out when they realized someone was onto them. Maybe. But it didn't explain everything. The surveillance. The notes. The camera. And it definitely didn't explain what I found the next morning, slipped under my door. A page from one of the notebooks. On it was a sketch of me standing in the hallway outside 1B. And underneath it, in small block letters, "You shouldn't have come in." I used to work at a packaging warehouse on the outskirts of a small town. Night shifts mostly, just a few of us rattling around a building too big for what little we did. The only thing separating the warehouse from total isolation was a dense stretch of forest behind it. Miles of trees, no trails, no lights, nothing man-made for hours. That's where things started. It was my third week on the job when I noticed it. A faint light flickering deep in the trees, barely visible through the loading dock door. Like a campfire, maybe. At first, I figured it was kids sneaking off to party. But it came back every night, always in the same spot, around 3:15 a.m. One night, curiosity got the better of me. During my break, I stepped outside, lit a cigarette, and just stared into the dark woods. Sure enough, there it was again, a small, steady glow way too far in to be natural light reflecting off anything near the property. I decided to walk closer, just to get a better look. The further I went, the quieter it became. No wind, no bugs, not even the usual rustling of leaves. After maybe 10 minutes of walking, I started to see shapes around the light. Not people, structures. Like little wooden huts or shelters, handmade and crooked. Completely out of place. The light was coming from a lantern hanging from a tree limb, swaying gently as if it had just been disturbed. That's when I heard it, a sharp, fast inhale. like someone was holding their breath behind me. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand, but saw nothing. Just trees and silence. I tried to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. Everything in my body told me to get out of there, but my feet wouldn't move. That inhale wasn't an animal. It was deliberate. Human. I backed away slowly, not daring to look away from the spot where I thought the sound had come from. As I moved, something shifted behind one of the crooked huts. A silhouette. Tall. Still. Watching me. Then it stepped forward, and my light caught its face for just a second. Except it wasn't a face. Not really. There was cloth over it. A hood. And something metallic reflecting from under the eye holes. Goggles, maybe? Or glass. I didn't wait to find out. I turned and bolted, crashing through branches, sprinting blindly back toward the warehouse, lungs burning, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. When I finally stumbled back onto the loading dock, I slammed the door shut and locked it behind me. My coworker, Aaron, took one look at my face and asked what the hell happened. I told him everything. He didn't even blink. Just nodded slowly and said, "You saw them too." I stared at Aaron, waiting for him to laugh or say he was joking. He didn't. He just looked tired, like he'd been carrying this for a while. "What do you mean them?" I asked, still catching my breath. He leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, eyes distant. "They live out there. Or hide. No one really knows. Every few months, someone working night shift sees the light. Fewer talk about what happens when they go to check it out." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to write him off as paranoid. The other part was still shaking from the run, from what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. "They ever come close?" I asked. Aaron nodded once. "A few times. Things left near the dumpsters. Animal bones arranged in weird patterns. Once, an old Polaroid of someone who used to work here, just staring into the woods. He quit the next day. Never even came back for his last paycheck." I laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood. "And you still work here?" Aaron shrugged. "Work's work. As long as you don't go back out there, you're fine." I didn't sleep well that day after my shift. Couldn't stop picturing that covered face. Or the silence. It wasn't just quiet, it was like sound had been swallowed whole. I told myself I'd stay away from the woods from now on. But that night, the light was back again. Only this time, it was closer. It hovered just beyond the loading dock, no more than 50 feet from the fence. A single flickering lantern swaying gently in the cold night air. Too close to ignore. I locked the door. "Every one of them," told Aaron. He nodded without a word and killed the lights inside the building. We waited in silence, both of us watching through a narrow window. The lantern didn't move. It just stayed there. Still. Like it was waiting for something. Minutes passed. Then, just as I started to think maybe it was nothing, maybe we were both imagining it, Aaron whispered, "Look!" A figure stepped into the light. Same hood. Same covered face. But this time, it wasn't alone. Another came. Then another. 4, 5, 7. All standing still, facing the building. Silent. Completely motionless. I backed away from the window, stomach twisting into knots. They didn't come closer. Didn't move. But they stayed like that until the sun started to rise. Then, without a sound, they vanished back into the woods, one by one, as if they'd never been there at all. We called the police. They found nothing. No lantern. No footprints. No sign of anyone being there. But that night, taped to the inside of the warehouse door, was a sheet of paper. On it was a simple message scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Next time, come alone. I used to travel a lot for work, small towns, regional offices, boring training sessions. One night, after a long drive and a delayed meeting, I ended up at a cheap roadside motel about 20 miles outside Des Moines. Nothing fancy. One-floor layout, flickering neon sign, front desk behind bulletproof glass. You've seen the type. The guy at the counter handed me a key, yes, a real key, and barely looked up from his ancient computer monitor. Room 9, he muttered. No breakfast. Check out at 10. The room smelled like mildew and bleach. Bed was stiff. Bathroom light buzzed. Still, I was too tired to care. I tossed my bag down, took a quick shower, and laid back to doom scroll on my phone until my eyes got heavy. Around 1:30 a.m., I was just drifting off when I heard it, 3 slow knocks on my door. Not loud. Almost polite. I froze, suddenly wide awake. No one should have known I was here. No one should have been up. I waited. Another 3 knocks. Then a voice. Calm, quiet, and wrong in a way I couldn't put my finger on. Let me in. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe. The voice came again. I saw your car. You're awake. Let me in. I sat up in bed, heart racing. Whoever was outside hadn't knocked again, but I could see their shadow through the thin gap under the door, standing still. Just waiting. I grabbed my phone to call the front desk, but the signal was gone. 0 bars. Of course. I crept quietly toward the window and pulled the curtain back just a hair. The parking lot was dimly lit by a buzzing yellow lamp, and there, clear as day, stood a man in a long gray coat, back to me, just outside my door. I waited. He didn't move. Then, without turning, he said, I can hear you breathing. I let go of the curtain like it was on fire and backed away from the window, pulse pounding in my ears. Every instinct told me to stay put. Not to open the door. Not to speak. The shadow under the door didn't shift. He didn't try to force his way in. He just stood there. For what felt like hours. Eventually, I must have dozed off in sheer exhaustion. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through the blinds. I thought maybe it had been a dream, until I looked at the door. At eye level, carved into the wood with something sharp, was a message. Next time, don't ignore me. I stood there staring at the carved message for a long time, unable to move. The words were deep, ragged, almost like they'd been scratched in with a knife. My hand hovered over the grooves, too afraid to touch them. I grabbed my things, didn't shower, didn't even brush my teeth. I just needed to get out of there. At the front desk, I tried to tell the clerk about what happened. He barely glanced at me and said, We don't have cameras outside the rooms. I didn't ask about cameras, I said, my voice low and tense. I'm telling you someone came to my door. He talked to me. He carved into the damn wood. He didn't flinch. Just looked at me, blank. You said room 9, right? I nodded. He turned the old guest book around and pointed to the entry above mine. Guy and roommate said the same thing last week. Same time. Same words. I didn't know what to say. I left. I drove for hours with the radio off, eyes glued to the rearview mirror. No one followed. No weird cars. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me anyway. When I got home, I tried to put it behind me. I told myself it was just a messed up guy. A drifter. One of those widows you occasionally cross paths with and hope to never see again. But a week later, I started hearing knocks again. At my apartment. Same time. 3 knocks. Then silence. And then the voice. You left too soon. I called the cops that night. Told them someone was harassing me, possibly following me from out of town. They sent a cruiser, but the area was quiet when they arrived. No signs of anyone. No footprints. Nothing on the hallway cameras. That should have been the end of it. Except it kept happening. Every night. Always the same, 1:30 a.m. 3 knocks. A voice. Sometimes it changed slightly. You shouldn't have left. Let me finish what I started. You can't pretend I'm not here. I moved. Changed apartments, changed numbers. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. First night in the new place? 3 knocks. I don't sleep anymore. I just wait. Some nights he doesn't come. Other nights he stays for hours. The worst part? Last night. I knocked back. Just once. And he laughed. I moved into the building mid-September, one of those fading towers on the edge of downtown, built sometime in the 70s and barely updated since. The elevator creaked, the mailboxes were crooked, and the smell in the stairwell changed depending on the day. But it was cheap, and after the year I'd had, cheap was enough. I took Unit 5D. 5th floor, end of the hall, just across from 5C. The moment I stepped into my apartment, something felt off. Not in my unit, but across the hall. 5C had a door that looked older than the others, more chipped around the edges, scuffed in a way that didn't feel random. Like someone had scratched at it. I figured it was vacant. No sounds. No packages. No signs of life. But 2 nights after moving in, I heard tapping from across the hall. Slow, rhythmic. Like someone drumming their knuckles against the inside of a hollow wall. I leaned against my own door and listened. The tapping stopped. Then came a whisper, so faint I couldn't make out the words, but I felt the intent behind it, like someone was trying to speak directly into my head through the wall. I jerked back and locked the deadbolt. I didn't sleep that night. It had been 5 days since I first heard the tapping from 5C, and I'd done my best to ignore it. Noise-canceling headphones. Late nights out. Anything to avoid being alone with that silence, the kind that feels like it's watching you. Then, one evening, I came home to find a package resting right at the center of my doormat. Brown paper. Twine-wrapped. No postage. No return address. Not even my name. Just one word, written in neat, blocky handwriting across the top. Yours. That word hit harder than it should have. I stood there for almost a full minute, staring at it, half expecting someone to knock or whisper again. They didn't. I brought it inside, stupid I know, and set it on my kitchen table. I circled it like it might move on its own. Curiosity finally got the better of me. Inside was an old black and white photo album. Its leather cover was cracked and brittle, the metal corners rusted. I opened it cautiously. The first photo showed 2 people standing outside this very building, probably 40 years ago. The next was another tenant. Then another. All of them smiling stiffly in front of the entrance. But there was one horrifying pattern. Every face had been scratched out. Not blurred. Not burned. Scratched, violently, as if someone had used a key or knife to gouge out their eyes, mouths, and sometimes even the outlines of their heads. I closed the book with a thud, heart pounding. As I backed away from the table, the overhead lights flickered, once, twice, then held steady. That exact sequence had happened before, the night I heard the whisper through the vent. Coincidence, I told myself. But then my phone buzzed. No message. Just a single notification from my voicemail app. New message received. I pressed play, hand trembling. There was a pause. Then the sound of breathing. Soft, raspy, close. And then a voice I'd never heard before, low, like someone speaking from the end of a long tunnel. I didn't sleep that night. The album sat on the table like a living thing. I thought about tossing it down the trash chute, driving it out to the river, setting it on fire in the alley, but something stopped me. Not fear. Not attachment. It was like resistance. Like whatever was in that book wanted to stay close. So I shoved it into a kitchen drawer, buried it under takeout menus and old bills, and tried to forget. For a few days, nothing happened. The tapping stopped. The vent was quiet. I almost let myself believe I'd imagined everything. But then I came home late one night, raining hard, soaked to the bone, and opened my fridge to grab a drink. That's when I saw it. The album. Sitting right in the middle of the fridge shelf. Upright. Dry. Perfectly placed. Like someone had deliberately put it there for me to find. I stepped back, mouth dry, head spinning. My kitchen window was locked. No sign of forced entry. Nothing missing. Except my sense of control. I opened the book. The photos were different now. Some faces were untouched. No scratches. Some were smiling, but not in a posed, formal way. These were candid shots. Private. People brushing their teeth. Eating. Sleeping. Watching TV. Moments no one would ever photograph unless they were in the room. And on the last page was me. Sitting at my desk. Head down. Wearing the same shirt I had on now. I slammed the album shut and bolted the closet. I stuffed the album in a shoebox, locked it, and placed it in the back of my closet under everything heavy I owned. That night I didn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I finally nodded off on the couch. At 3:07 a.m., I woke to 3 slow, deliberate knocks from inside my bedroom closet. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, through the silence, a soft whisper came through the walls. "He's seen you now." After that night, I started sleeping with the lights on. Every door locked. Closets jammed shut. The album stayed buried beneath my heaviest things, locked in a box, under old coats, beneath a chair I wedged into the closet like a barricade. But none of it helped. Every night at 3:07 a.m., the knocking returned. 3 slow raps. Always from the closet. I stopped answering calls. Ignored texts. I think people assumed I was going through something. And they were right, but not in any way they could understand. Then came the footprints. I woke up one morning and stepped into my hallway barefoot. The hardwood floor felt damp. Not soaked, just cold. I glanced down and saw the smudges. Bare footprints. Long-toed. Slightly smeared. Starting from the closet and leading to my kitchen. Then stopping completely. No prints near the door. None near the window. Just a trail that started inside. That same day, I installed cameras. 3 of them. One by the door, one facing the hallway, one pointed directly at the closet. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Paranoid. But I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, phone open to the security app, watching each camera feed flicker softly in grayscale. At exactly 3:07 a.m., the feed from the hallway camera cut to static. Just for a second. When it returned, the closet door was ajar. I ran to it, phone in one hand, heart thudding in my throat. The chair was still wedged against the door. The padlock still latched. But the door had somehow opened an inch. And the shoebox with the album? Gone. I checked the camera footage again, frame by frame. Right before the feed cut out, something moved, just a flicker, in the bottom left corner. A shape. A leg, maybe? Or an arm. Something crawling out from under the door. I didn't sleep again. The next day, there was a knock at the door. It was Kyle. The neighbor from 4B. He looked terrible, sunken eyes pale, like he hadn't slept in weeks. He didn't say hello. "You kept it," he said. "What?" "The album. You kept it." I stared at him, mouth dry. "How do you?" He shook his head. "You need to come with me. Now. Before it's too late." I followed Kyle down the emergency stairs, past floor after floor of buzzing lights and concrete silence. He didn't speak. Just kept walking, glancing over his shoulder every few steps like we were being followed. At the bottom, he used a key to unlock a rusted metal door I'd never noticed before. No number. No sign. Just a black smudge where paint had long since peeled. "What is this?" I asked. "The basement," Kyle muttered. "The part they don't list on the blueprints." He led me down a hallway that looked like something out of a forgotten maintenance tunnel. Dust thick in the air, flickering bulbs, walls sweating with moisture. Old fuse boxes buzzed faintly, their labels scratched off long ago. Then we reached a door at the very end. It looked wrong. Crooked on its hinges. Covered in layers of paint, like someone had tried sealing it shut a dozen times. But it was the number that stopped my breath. 5C. Painted in thin black brush strokes. "But 5CS upstairs," I whispered. "That's my floor." "No," Kyle said quietly. "That's the new 5C. This was the first one. Before they sealed it off, he opened the door. The air was colder inside. Heavy. Not just cold like a draft, but like a deep, pressurized stillness. Like the room had been waiting. The space was small. Cracked tile. Mildew climbing the walls like veins. No windows. No furniture except for a rusted chair in the corner, and a bed frame with no mattress. On the far wall was what looked like wallpaper, until I stepped closer. It was a grid of photographs. Hundreds. Taped. Nailed. Pinned. Some faded and curled. Some fresh. All faces. All former tenants. Every single one with the same building behind them. Some smiling. Some mid-blink. But in the center of the wall was me. My photo. Taken from the back, sitting at my desk, hunched over my laptop. I hadn't taken it. No one I knew had. And written in thick black ink beneath it. He sees you now. That's when I noticed the album, sitting quietly in the corner on the chair, as if it had been waiting for me to return. Kyle stepped back. I shouldn't have brought you here, he said. I'm sorry. What is this? I snapped, chest heaving. What the hell is this place? But Kyle wouldn't answer. He turned, sprinted out the door, leaving me standing there alone. The lights flickered once. Then again. And then they went out. Total, suffocating darkness swallowed me. In the silence I heard it. That now familiar sound. 3 knocks. Not on the door. Not behind me. From inside the room. I ran. Fumbled. Hit the wall. Slid along it until I found the exit. The hallway was empty. Lights back on. The door to 5C now gone, replaced by crumbling bricks and water stains. I never found Kyle again. He vanished. Moved out, I guess. No one at the front desk knew a thing. I didn't stay long after that. Packed up and left the building for good. I didn't even break my lease. I just stopped coming back. But some nights, usually around 3:07 a.m., I still feel it. The knock. Sometimes on my closet. Sometimes from under the bed. Once, from my bathroom mirror. And sometimes, when I pass reflective glass, I swear I see a room behind me that shouldn't exist. With a chair. And a photo album. Waiting.